Hello and welcome to lesson 12 of JavaScript. In this lesson, we are going to look at dates and date methods. My name is Mildred. In JavaScript, we create a date by declaring a variable. So let's say constant today date is equal to, and a date is created by using the date object, new date like this. If we create a date using the date object without any value in the parentheses, we are going to get the date, today's date, in your time zone or the time zone of your browser. So let's print out today's date to the page. So when I save this and I refresh my page, I'm going to get the current date and time in my browser's time zone. Now the date is static, which means the clock doesn't tick. So if I want to get the current seconds, I'll keep refreshing to see that it changes when I refresh. So take note that the date is not like a dynamic date that keeps ticking, it's just static, and you get the date at the very time that the script finished running. We can supply a date that we want this to print out. Let's say I want it to print out 2010, 3rd of March, like this. So it is year, month, day. When I save this and I refresh, it will give me the date that I have specified there, March 2nd, 2010. And why it's giving me this is it's giving me in Pacific Standard Time Zone. Now the default time for the system is usually 1st of January 1970 by midnight. And so because of my time zone, I'm going to be getting this. This is what is going to give me in my own time zone on Pacific Standard Time. If I want to convert this to, let's say, to UTC, there is a method I can use, and it is written like this. I'll put a dot and I'll put to UTC string like this. When I save this and I refresh, it's going to give me this in UTC string, which now puts this at the date, which is Wednesday, 3rd of March, as I was specified there. If I want it to be today's date, I'll take out this date string to UTC string, and I'm going to have it December 21st, 2022, and it's going to give me the time in GMT. Now UTC is equal to GMT. If I want to convert this to the ISO standard, which is the international standard, I will write to ISO string like this. And this gives me to ISO 8601. And when I save this and I refresh, I'm going to have that to the ISO string. And now ISO has a T, capital T, that separates the date from the time, and it also uses a Z to indicate UTC at the end. If I want to make sure that this date is more readable, I just want a more readable date format, I'm going to use to date string. So I'm changing this to date string like this. When I refresh, I'll find that the date is now more readable than having the whole time string and time zones added to it. So if I want to have a date converted to milliseconds, I'm going to change this to use date.pass. So let's say I want date.pass written like this, and in a pair of parentheses, I'm going to put the date I want to pass. Let's say today date. So it's going to change this to the milliseconds representation of today's date. So when I refresh my page, I'll have the millisecond representation of today's date. We have other methods that we use to get part of a date, and methods that we can use to set or reset part of a date. But before we look at that, let's look at different other ways we can supply parameters to the date method. Let's say I want to supply the year, month, day, then hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. We can supply up to 7 arguments here. We must start with the year. So let's say I want to put 2022. I want to supply the months. Now in JavaScript, months counting starts from 0, so January is 0. Days start from Sunday, so Sunday is 0. December is 11. Number 6 is Saturday, so we have 0 to 6 for days, 0 to 11 for months. So take note of that. So let's say I want to put December. I want to put the date 21st. I want to put the hour. So let's say the hour is 7, the minute is 51, the second is 30, and let's say we don't know what the millisecond is, we'll leave it out. If you know the millisecond, you put it there. When I do this and I print out to the date, it's going to convert all of this into a date for me. Now if I supply only 3, it's going to make it year, month, day, like that. Only 2, year and month. Only one is going to have a problem, and is going to supply this as milliseconds. So it's going to interpret 2022 as milliseconds instead of years, and so this is going to be interpreted as milliseconds and not year. Now if you supply arguments so that we have the month is supposed to be 0 to 11, and I made a mistake and I put something like 12, it doesn't give you an error, it just rolls over to a new month. So instead of counting this as 12, which it stops at 11 December, is going to take the overflow 1 and change it to January. And so by the time I save and refresh, what I'll be getting will be January instead. So these are the different ways to use or to create dates on the page. Now let's look at how to get dates or different parts of a date. So I have today's date here. I want to get just the year of today's date. I don't want to print out the whole date string to the page. I'll use .get full year like this. When I refresh, all I'll have on the page is 2022. If I want to return the month, I'll do .get month like this. Refresh, and I'm going to get the month as December is 11. Now this return the number. If I want to return the month in words and not in number, I have an array called months on the page, because this is going to return the index, which is the number 11. What I can do here to display this month in words, I can say let month be equal to, and I will set it as months, which is the array, and I want the array to use the index of today.get month like this. And when I print out months, I'm going to be getting the month December rather than the index or the numerical representation. So month today dates.get month. I'll save this, I'll refresh, and I have December printed to the page. If I want to change this to day, I'll use the days array like this, change this to get day, and this is going to return the day of the week from the array rather than the index. So if I decide I want to print out just the index, what I'll do here is I will ignore that, and I'll just do today date dot get day, and it gives me the index. Today is Wednesday, and so I'm going to be getting the number 3, because counting the first day of the week in JavaScript is Sunday. Counting starts from Sunday, and Sunday is 0, so Wednesday is 3. So I'll save this, refresh, and I'll get number 3 instead. So you can create an array of the months and the days and use this method to get the month spelled out in words and the day spelled out in words, or you can just get the number representation of that on the page. We can also have a date string and we want to get the hour out of it. Let's say, for instance, somebody said they were born in 1976, and let's say the month is May 9th, like this. Or let's specify it as having the year 1976. Now let me tell you something about writing the 4-digit year. If you specify a 2-digit year like 76, it is going to use the previous century. For instance, we are in 2022, so 20 before 22, so it's going to use the previous 19. So it's going to assume this is 1976. If I want to write 2022 and I write 22 instead of the 20 before, it is going to assume that this is 1922. So when I want to use 2-digit dates and I want 2022 to be printed, we have to wait until we are in 3022 to use 22 to come back. So we have this 1976, we have the month, let's say we have the day, we have the hour, let's say the hour is 7, the minute is 8, the second is not known. We'll stop here. I want to get the hours, so I'll use get hours like this, and so it's going to give me the hour, which is 7. Refresh, and I'll get the hour as 7. If I want to get the minutes, I'll use get minutes. Save, refresh, and I'm going to get minutes. If I want to get the seconds, we don't have seconds here, so everything will default to 0 because I did not specify second, and so I'm going to get it as 0 there. And the same thing for, let's use get milliseconds and refresh, and we'll get that as 0 because it is not specified. And so this is how we use the different methods. So if we have time, for instance, we use get time, so it just prints out the time for us, and I'll refresh, it will give me the time in milliseconds. So we have things like we want to get the difference between the current time in our local time zone and that of the system the default time zone, which is 1st of January 1970. We use the get time zone offset. So I can say today date like this, dot get time zone offset like this. And this is going to give us the value printed to the page in milliseconds. So these are all the get methods. We have things like the set method that we use to set or reset the date value. Let's say we have this today's date to be 1976 10/09. Let's say we want to reset this from 1976 and we want to supply a new date. Let's say we want to change it from 1976 to 2020. So we'll print out today's date and you'll see what today's date is. It is 1976. And then we want to change this now to 2020. So we can say today's date dot set full year like this. And when we set the full year, we want the year to be 2022 like this. I'll save this, I'll refresh, and we have it in milliseconds. So this sets the full year in milliseconds, but if I don't want it to be in milliseconds, I can decide that I want to use the new date method to set it to the normal date and get the year out of it. So I can use new date in parentheses like this, and I'll put dot get year. So at this point, I'm going to be printing out the 2022 to the screen rather than in milliseconds like that. So these are the ways that we use JavaScript to print out to the screen. So I'm going to delete this and we're going to look at the next method. So we have the set date method. And now the set date method is to set the day the same way we have set the full year. We can also set the hours, set the milliseconds, set the minutes, set the months, set the seconds, set the time. So it's the same idea. Replace whatever date you have or whatever day you have, whatever month you have. Another thing we can use the set date method to do is to manipulate dates. Like let's say we want to add days to a date. The set date method is the best way to do this. And this is how we'll do it. Let's say for instance, we want to say we are given an assignment, right? The date of the assignment, let's create a date, is let's say December 30th, 2022. We want this assignment to be due in 10 days and we want the system to automatically withdraw this access to this assignment 10 days from the day that it was uploaded. So we have an upload date or a release date, and then we want to add days, number of days for the system to count after the release date. And so this is what we'll do. We'll say something like let duration be equal to, we'll say 10, and then we can now say let end date be equal to, and then we're going to use the set date method. We're going to get the today date, right? And we're going to put dot set date like this, and in a pair of parentheses we will get today's date. We want to get the day part, so we'll say dot get date like this. And what we do when we get the day part, we want to add the duration to it like this. And when we do this and we print out end date to the page, we should have the end date to be, so from 30th to 10 days after should be like 9th of January 2023. So when I refresh my page, I will have it in milliseconds, and we know the drill of converting this to a date string rather than having it in milliseconds like this. So we can say new date like this. Let's see if this converts it to the date string or the correct date string, and then we can use, so we have it as Monday, January 9th, 2023 Pacific time. So, and you can use this to actually get the user's browser's time zone. So the browser is in a different time zone, like I am in an Atlantic Standard Time zone, but my system is in a Pacific Standard Time zone. I did not change my time zone, so all my time is in Pacific Standard Time, even if I am in the Atlantic Standard Time zone. So it's going to use your browser's time zone. So you always want to make sure that you set your browser's time zone to the time zone you have, so you don't get confused, because it is going to give you the equivalent time in a different time zone. So these are the set methods we have. Remember, we have set date, we have set full year, we have set hours, set millisecond, set minutes, set months, set second, set time. It all follows the same pattern. So you can go ahead to create things like you still want to, let's say you have a registration page. you can create a function to check the age of the person registering. If you have an age restriction to say anybody less than 15 cannot register, anybody greater than 15 should be led to click the submit button, things like that. You can create something like, you have today's date is today. So you always want the system, when the user is filling the form, to check the date of birth field. So let's say we have things like constant date of birth written like this, and the user supplies a date of birth. So we'll say it's new date. Whatever the user supplies will come here. So let's assume the user supplied something like 2013, September 9th, like this. And then we want to check if the person's age. So we can now say let age be equal to, what we want to do is manipulate this to subtract date of birth from today's date. We want to only get the year. So let's say the current year now is going to be let's say let current year be today date dot get full year, like this. And we want to get the full year, let age year be equal to today date of birth dot get full year, like this. So we want to say let x be equal to current year minus age year, like this. If x is greater or equal to 15, we want to do something else, we want to do something else. So we've not done conditional statements, but I'm using it to just show you how we can apply this whole date manipulation to our software development. But we are going to look at this in detail. So what we wanted to do when this is like that, we wanted to print out something. So let me use this and say if this is this, let it print out here and write you can proceed with registration. But if not, we want to see you are too young to register. Now, one thing you should know is that this returns a string, so the manipulation might not work. And remember that we convert string to integer by using the parseInt method like this. So your system might produce something different from mine. You might not need to change from millisecond to the date. It might just produce the date directly, or you might need to change it. But these are the methods. In the event you have milliseconds, you know all the methods to convert it to a full date string. So I get the year. I want it to be in integer and not as a string. And I get the current year also, and I use the parseInt method to change that. And so when I parseInt, then I can actually do the subtraction and then check for this. So let's save to see what the system prints out. So somebody who was born in 2013 should be 9 years old right now. This is not correct. Save this, refresh, and I have it. You are too young to register. Let's say we change the year to 1980, for instance. The person is above 15, so the person is able to register. You can proceed with registration. So instead of printing out to the page, you tell the script to do something. Present a form to continue registration, submit the form, release the submit button, things like that. So there are several things you can do with JavaScript on the front end. And then if you use things like different JavaScript libraries and framework, you can actually use JavaScript at the back end if you use Node.js for the rest. So this is where we end this lesson, and this is all about dates and date method. Try to practice to learn more on how to manipulate dates. It will come in handy in your software development project. In the next lesson, we are going to look at classes and objects, and then we're going to look at how to start using all of what we've learned in our software development project.